Hi, I'm Charlotte Canion, the award-winning author of the book You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents. Now, I was a caregiver for 3 parents, a father-in-law with dementia, a mother with Alzheimer's, and a dad with Parkinson for over 16 years. And that was the beginning of my journey. And now they call me the voice of the caregiver. Now, if you don't know this, you've either been a caregiver or will be a caregiver, because it touches everybody's life. What I learned through my journey was that there are 4 golden rules. You have to love unconditionally. You have to respect them for who, what, and where they are. And you have to have patience. You have to have patience not with the one you're caring for, but have patience with yourself. And forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the biggest ones. You have to forgive the past. You have to forgive something that might happen in the future. And you might need to forgive something that's happening right now. If you follow those 4 rules, caregiving will be a lot easier. Up till now, you may have dealt with life with grace and style, learning from the mistakes you've made along the way. You raised a family, enjoyed a successful career. Now you're facing the challenge of a lifetime, one that you may have a feeling like you're in the deep end of the pool and you can't catch a breath. Sometimes parenting your parents or caring for a loved one can be an overwhelming task, one that has you strengthening to keep that head above water. In my book, you will find the permission to laugh, to cry, and to make a mistake. And you will learn to get up and have strength and encouragement every day and repeat the cycle. I'm going to read a few stories from my book, and there's 23 stories that talk about love, respect, patience, and forgiveness. This one is called Are You Kidding Me? Or The Peeping Tom. One Sunday morning after church, Craig, my husband, and I headed down to East Texas to see my parents. Mom was in the early stages of Alzheimer's, and we did not know at that time that my dad was in the beginning stages of Parkinson. We always took lunch that day that we go visit him, and I think I made a pot roast. When we got there, I proceeded to set the table and get the food on the table. Well, Mom was trying to help me the best she could. Now, with the Alzheimer's, she had forgotten how or why to cook. Now, what happened was my dad kept pounding me, and he kept saying, "We have a problem with Mom." Now, he was convinced that a 40-year-old neighbor who lived over a football field away was a peeping Tom, and that my mom was putting a show on for him out the bathroom window. Let me paint this picture for you. My mother was in her 80s. Now, although she was a lovely lady, Father Time had done his best to cause many parts of her body to sag and sag and sag some more. But to me, she was just beautiful. And to everyone else, well, she was just a nice little old lady, shrunken down to 5'3". Now, the bathroom window in my parents' house was very high. It hit me about my shoulder. If I used my imagination, which I didn't wish to do in this matter, I figured the only way anyone could have seen my nude mom at 85 years old was she had to stand on the top of the toilet. Well, my mom couldn't even step off a curb, so I knew that was not what's happening. Now, Dad kept insisting, though, Every time I was by myself, he would, oh my gosh, he would go, Charlotte, we've got a problem with your mama. A side effect of Parkinson, and maybe you don't know this, is paranoia. And Dad had always been jealous of my mother or anyone that looked at her. So with his jealousy, which was nothing new, it was only amplified by the disease of Parkinson that we didn't know he had at that time. The talk about the issue carried on throughout dinner, and it was wearing me down emotionally. After a few hours, we were really ready to leave, but my dad kept going, what are we going to do about Mama? And he complained and alleged about that peeping Tom. Well, I finally looked him in the eye and said, Dad, if you are really worried about this, I'll call the police. They'll put a stake out and they'll catch the peeping Tom. Well, all of a sudden, my dad says, oh my gosh, you can't do that. You will ruin your mother's reputation. Oh, I was exasperated. I told my husband, we've got to leave. So we hugged, we waved goodbye. We got in the car and I said, hit the gas. Oh no, about that moment later, my dad taps on the window. What are we going to do about Mama? I told him again, I will call the police. He goes, oh no, don't do that. We can't ruin your mother's reputation. 85-year-olds, you know, I could laugh at that now, but in a moment, I was madder than a hornet. And I yelled for Craig to take me home. He hit the gas and we were gone. This is a story about love confused. Now, sometimes when our seniors have dementia, or which covers the umbrella of Alzheimer's and Parkinson and everything, and forgetfulness, they get a little confused about things. I remember a particular time when my husband and I went to visit my mom. Now, she was in a senior community at this time. It was a beautiful morning, and we had attended church. We picked up donuts for the nurses, and the donut holes were for Mom. Now, we always like to show special kindness to the nurses and the nurses' aides because we knew my mother would have done that if she could have. That day, Mom was in really good spirits. We could always tell in the first few minutes if it was going to be a good visit or maybe a not so good one. Well, it turned out this was a very good one. Mom was walking around in her Mary Walker. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is, well, it's similar to a grown-up version of a baby walker. It was made out of PVC pipe with bumpers all around so she could sit or stand or just walk around anywhere she wanted. Well, yes, she bumped into everything, but that was okay. Her Mary Walker made her feel some freedom, and it increased her mobility. She was all over the nursing home, and sometimes we had to search for her. On this particular day, we found her by the nurse's station. She seemed to recognize me, but that was becoming intermittent. But she was especially excited to see my husband, Craig. I think she mistook him for my dad. I was always in her room, fixing her room, combing her hair, doing something around the room. And she sat down on the bed and she patted beside her and wanted my husband, Craig, to sit down beside her. So Craig sat down beside Mom. Now, when we moved Mom to the nursing one, everyone thought that I was the daughter-in-law and that he was the son. because my dad's stature and my husband's were very similar. Well, my husband sat down next to my mom, and she leaned into him and said, "Honey, did you enjoy yourself last night?" Now, I perked up at that point, and I'm going, where is this going? Next thing I know, she scoots over closer to Craig, and she said, "Did you enjoy yourself last night? You know what we did. Remember, it was so special." Boy, at that moment, I turned around, and I was doing everything I could to distract her, and I knew I had chocolate in my purse. She loved chocolate kisses. And one thing, kind of like children, you can distract their direction. So when I gave her the chocolate kiss, she put it in her mouth, and she did not tell us the story that she was getting ready to, I guess, expose to me, and was not something I really wanted to hear. I knew it was not a subject that anybody wanted to hear, because I didn't know what they did in the bedroom, and I really didn't want to know. Now, what's funny, and I do put a lot of laughter in my books, is I love remembering these stories. It helps me to teach and remember you respect them for who, what, and where they are. Now, my mom's mind was in different places, different days, and every day was a new adventure. When spending time with your parents seems like too much effort, remember, one day all you will have left are memories. Now, I've told you some fun things, and this is even funnier. When my mom could still drive the phone, call on the phone, she would call me, and she'd say, "Can you tell me the frayed knot joke?" Now, I'm going to tell you the joke because you'll understand why it's funny. A rope walks into a bar, and he jumps up on the bar stool, and he says, "Bartender, bartender, give me a beer." Now, the bartender looks at the rope, and he says, "We don't serve your kind in here." Well, the rope got real dejected, and he hopped out. He went outside, he twisted himself, frayed his top, and hopped back into the bar. He says, "Bartender, bartender, give me a beer." The bartender looked at him again, and he said, "Are you that rope that was in here a few minutes ago?" A frayed knot. And Mom would always call me and ask me, what is the punchline to the frayed knot joke? Well, that was the punchline, of course. Now, I'm going to share another story with you. Now, I have a brother that is 9 years younger than me, and he moved 3,389 miles away. But he would come visit maybe once a year. Well, when I told my dad this, and my dad lived in the same community as my mom, he started planning things. So this is called Cut My Steak. Although my dad never wanted to live in a senior facility, another story in this book will explain how he ended up into a senior community. This book does not chronologically follow any orders. It's just about love, respect, patience, and forgiveness. Remember, I said there's 23 stories. Well, about once a year, my brother came to Texas to visit. His name was Bill. He lived in Juneau, Alaska. So it's a pretty big deal when he would venture stateside. It usually took him about a day and a half to get from Juneau to Texas, and he liked it that way, with lots of layovers. Now, Dad was really looking forward to this. When I told him Bill was coming down, Dad got really excited. He immediately made plans to go to dinner. And he found out that the best dinner place was the Ponder Steakhouse. Well, I guess he talked to Rhonda or Wanda, who happened to be the directors at the facility, and they had told him this one is world renowned. They had a chef that was just unbelievable, and a lady named Granny Stack, and she made homemade pies and cobblers for 34 years. Now the restaurant was 10 miles down the road from the nursing home. So that was Dad's plan when my brother came to town. He insisted that he would pay. Well, when Bill got to Texas and rested after his long, long flight, we went to see Dad. We planned the outing to the Ranchman Ponder Steakhouse in the next evening. Dad dressed in slacks and a shirt rather than his normal jumpsuit. He was ready and waiting out the door as we went to the Ponder Steakhouse. And while we were there, Dad had to ask my dad, my dad had to ask my dad to cut his steak. Now for a Marine who is a senior, who is very strong-willed, that's a hard thing for a man to do.